Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for joining on here. If one of the Dido folks in the audience could let me know if you can't see my screen, you should all be able to see that now, but just want to double check that. And I want to thank everyone for joining in. My name's Evan. I am the G Suite team lead here at Dido. So I oversee all of our deployment projects, working with customers to deploy and leverage G Suite. We work on many types of professional services engagements, from training and workflow development to admin level. So one of the things that I really want to encourage people to do today is ask plenty of questions. Love to, if I need to pause in the middle, I can, to answer a question that's relevant to content, or at the end we'll have some time as well for other questions. So if it's something that's more general, I'll circle back to it. Today, our main topic is around automating common tasks in G Suite. So we'll be going through some examples of areas that G Suite can kind of augment how your users, or how you yourself leverage G Suite. So I'm really excited to kind of get into that. Little bit of background. I know for many of the attendees that are on, you are existing Dido customers, and welcome back. For those that are not yet a Dido customer, tiny bit of background on us. We are a full stack Google Cloud Premier partner. That means that we meet the highest level of certification and expertise out of the Google partner ecosystem. We focus on end user and data migration, IT modernization, ongoing services, support type engagements. And we work in G Suite, Google Cloud Platform, covering infrastructure, data, location, Google Maps, machine learning, AI. So really one-stop shop for all of the kind of Google Cloud type services. And this is a very abbreviated logo slide. With just a couple of the organizations that we work with regularly. But I do want to share that we've been in the ecosystem for actually over 10 years now. We were one of the original G Suite partners, and since then we've integrated and incorporated GCP, Google Maps, Chrome, Jamboards, and many different types of professional services into our book of business. So any of those areas, you're welcome to reach out to myself or to Dido directly, and we're happy to kind of consult in those areas and potentially help out. So jumping into our agenda for today, I'll be doing, this is a monthly webinar series. So I always start off with highlighting the most recent updates to G Suite. Usually I pull that from last month's updates. So there actually have already been a good number of updates this month, and I'll be touching on those next month. So slight delay there, but it gives me time to go in and actually pull out the major updates, the ones that are most likely to affect end users and admins, and then just provide those to you directly. So strongly encourage jumping in each month and kind of following the narrative there. Our main topic today certainly is around automating common tasks in G Suite. So I'll go through a couple of examples, and I'll be very happy to answer questions. It's pretty hard to develop a new automation during a live stream, but I'll give it a shot. So if you have something that you would love to see, like how might I go about automating this process that I have, you're welcome to share your process, and I'll weigh in there. If I can even do it live, I definitely will take a shot. And then our use case of the month is a kind of a quick segment that I do after we go through the main topic. This month, I'm going to be talking about snooze in Gmail, which is a real game changer for people who spend a lot of time in their mailbox, which for most people is definitely something that they're doing. And statistically, and we have data on this and research that Google and Gartner have done, the average office worker spends about 8 to 10 hours of their work week in their mailbox. So if we can use snooze in Gmail to answer the right emails at the right time, we can help to be more efficient and productive in our mailboxes. And the reason I put the use case of the month after the main topic and before the Q&A is that's when I want to have a little bit of time for people to submit questions so that we can address those. All in all, we're about 7 minutes in here, 5 minutes in since we started a few minutes late. But we should be going for pretty close to the full hour this time. It's a virtually unlimited amount of conversation that we could have about automating tasks in G Suite. G Suite is designed to automate tasks, in fact. So any questions, definitely feel free to drop those in. Let's make it a dialogue. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by plugging the G Suite blog. This is one that I always like to mention kind of at the beginning of the webinar. The G Suite Updates blog is the resource that we leverage. It's an amazing resource that Google updates on average once every other day ish, about that much. So there are a lot of notifications coming through. The goal of this segment in the webinar is to help you sort through and see, okay, which ones do I really need to be aware of change impacts on? But ultimately, if you want to plug in directly to the feed, this is where to go. This is direct from Google. And then that's just gsuiteupdates.googleblog.com. You can also do a quick search for G Suite Updates blog and you'll find it. Last month, we averaged an update every other day. And by the way, these are not little tiny upgrades or updates to UI elements or a new button in a drop-down menu or in a like a document or a mailbox. These are updates that for some slice of your users are going to change the way that they use G Suite. So often you'll see updates to things like accessibility or how an application can be used for different workflows, including examples. And the updates go into a great amount of detail. So I can't recommend this enough. But jumping into kind of the 5-ish key updates that that we saw come in the last month, and forgive my my low resolution here, I blew that up a little bit too much, it looks like. But Google has now added out of office to Gmail and Hangouts chat. So now when you have an out of office entry on your calendar, a notice of that out of office status is going to appear in your Gmail and in your Hangouts chat when people try to contact you. So in Gmail, this will show a banner at the bottom of the email. In Hangouts chat or currently in chat in your mailbox, you can see the example of where it'll show that stripe. In Hangouts chat, it will show a very similar stripe if you use that as the standalone application. This has been a really highly requested feature for a very long time, and it's great to see that integration coming out. Now, when you when you go out of office, you can set out of office on your calendar. It's automatically going to decline meetings during that time, and now it's automatically going to set that out of office status in your other applications as well. You still need to write a vacation responder, but this is a pretty nice step, especially the chat one. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but if you've ever chatted someone, it's, you don't always go look at their calendar and see, oh, is that person out of office? But now you really don't need to. So great to see this improvement to the workflow. The next update I want to touch on is in the Google Sheets world. Google has now added some additional tools for reporting in Google Sheets. So creating kind of dashboards and reports, especially that you might need to share cross team or cross organization. These are going to be really nice ones. Also for those big Excel users out there, some of these are features you may even be familiar with the terminology on. Basically what Google has added here is slicers, scorecard charts, and themes. So you can actually set up kind of themed dashboards, including and incorporating filterable metrics where you can slice out the data that you want to take a look at. So Sheets has been a huge area of investment. I think a lot of G Suite users are familiar with. The biggest reason historically that we've seen organizations leverage Google Sheets is live collaboration, for sure. But over time, and especially in the last 2 years or so, Sheets has really gained quite a lot of functionality, and this is a continued build on type of that. For those that are not familiar with these specific types of features, or if you've lived in the Google world for a while, slicers are the way of filtering your reports by condition or value. So we can see those slicers for nationality and passengers in our AirAsia example. Scorecard charts are a new way to call out key metrics. So when you're delivering KPIs or key stats within a sheet, you have the option to show your stat in comparison to another number. You can even show that over time and things like that. So we can see those breakdowns kind of showing up in our charts there. And then themes are very much the look and feel of an entire spreadsheet, including all of the charts, pivot tables, and cells, so that you can ensure a consistent look. So great ability for a marketing team or for internal types of presentations, whomever is reporting on these, to create that consistent and professional look when delivering their reports. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the admin side for a bit. We've got 3 pretty key updates on the admin side of the world. The first one is new Alert Center features. So for those not familiar, the G Suite Administrator Alert Center rolled out kind of towards the end of last year. This shows key alerts within the organization as well as the current status of those alerts. And there have been some pretty big updates since that one originally rolled out. And now the specific updates that came out last month are around finding, collaborating, and actually taking action on potential issues within your domain, so that you can do things like assign alerts to other team members or to yourself, and then you can manage and track the alert status to say not started, in progress, complete. You can prioritize your alert triage. You can see related alerts for a same user. You can correlate that to other users. You can add search attributes. Really, quite a bit is going into the Admin Alert Center. Alerting is a really important aspect of the G Suite security environment. So this is an area of continued investment for Google for improving the dashboards, the search capabilities, the alert collaboration, things like that. So really the goal here is to make it really easy for an admin to find and manage their alerts quickly and easily. So even doing things like bookmarking a specific alert or bulk deleting alerts that have been addressed or are not important are all now kind of built in and baked in as core aspects of this alert center. The next one on the admin side, this is going to be a G Suite Enterprise capability. So just FYI for those organizations out there that are not on the Enterprise Edition, you would not have this feature at present. The Security Center can now search Gmail content. You can also save investigations, and there have been a couple of other additional features added as well, those being the big 2. Now, the ability to view Gmail content directly in the investigation tool does require an access justification, and it does require a sufficient level of admin permissions. So if you have delegated admins, you can set up a delegated admin that can use the alert or the investigation tool for metadata. but not for reading user emails. You can still break it down like that to get kind of the same functionality as existed before this. However, for those admins that are super admin or need to be able to actually conduct investigations into user-generated content, they can now actually input an access justification and read user emails directly in the investigation tool. Now, historically, I'm sure many of the admins out there have done this in the past. Investigations would typically be conducted in Google Vault. The reason you would use the investigation tool is that it actually gives you the ability to go act on your user information directly from the search. So you run the search into the user information, you identify the message that you need to read, and then at the bottom of that message, and again, my resolution's off, it's a bit blurry, but there is a delete message, restore message, mark messages spam, and more. You can actually do quite a bit with the email as it resides in the user mailbox. So quite a bit of capability in terms of actually taking action on your user mailbox. Now, again, the Security Center is an enterprise-only feature, but it makes administration a heck of a lot easier for admins that need to be able to go in and actually act on their user mailboxes. And then the last and kind of final recent G Suite update I wanted to touch on here today is that admins can now see and edit user recovery information. When you go into your user details, or you can do this by CSV, you can do it in bulk. You can now reset user recovery information based on email address and phone number. So if anyone's ever had to go log into a user account, they've probably had to go break two-step verification, potentially even move that user to an OU where two-factor was not enforced. It can be tricky to access a user, even a former employee's account, due to two-step verification requirements, but this actually gives admins the manageability to go set up, okay, we can actually control exactly how our recovery is done. So this is going to be inside the actual user security information, as you can see in this little graphic. This feature was developed based on customer feedback, by the way. If you're involved in the Cloud Connect community, you may have even seen this particular feature request come through. Strongly recommend, if you ever think, man, I wish that G Suite had XYZ feature, it would make my life a heck of a lot easier. Strongly endorse going into that community, searching through it to see if your feature is already there and then upvoting it. But Google actually takes these types of features into consideration from a product development standpoint. There are many channels into Google for how you can provide this into consideration. From the feature requests on the Cloud Connect community is the most direct line, the most consistent and reliable line in. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump forward into our main topic here today, which is automating common tasks in G Suite. Now, for context, I do want to specify how we're thinking about automation for today's presentation. The term automation means a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts, and actually even within the G Suite world, it can mean kind of 3 or 4 different things. So the type of automation that I'm going to be focusing in really heavily on today, and the one that I get the most questions about, is how automation can augment your user activities. So how you as a user can say, well, I have this unique workload and it usually follows this format. I could deal with 90% of it just with a rule of some type. And then actually going in and applying that rule. And I'm actually going to be focusing mostly on Gmail and on Google Sheets today, since those are the key areas that we receive the most requests. Now, the term automation in G Suite can also be areas where automation might replace user-driven activity. The best example I know of for that is the spam filter. The spam filter is a form of automation because it automatically sorts your email based on many different criteria and handles it for you. Conceivably, you could go in and write thousands or millions of your own rules for automation, and you could do the same thing that the spam filter does. But since that is a fully automatic process, that's not what I'm going to be focusing on. Today is about learning and finding areas that we can actually go in and improve our workday. One other note, and this is kind of the third definition of automation in G Suite. The first being augmentation to the user, the second being fully automatic behavior. The third is very much around extensibility. How can I build on top of G Suite to do my workflows better? There are many softwares out there. There are many APIs out there. Part of what I love about G Suite is that it enables non-technical staff and employees to use technology very effectively. And to that being said, for those technical team members out there, those folks who are experts in scripting or in app development, if you've ever used AppMaker, I'm not going to be focusing on those ones quite so much today. So I do want to start off with just a little bit of background here. There really are three main ways if you want to go build a workflow on top of G Suite. And those are AppMaker, which is available on business and enterprise editions. AppMaker is a low-code app development tool that gives you a user interface, a graphical user interface where you can drag and drop UI elements and you can create your rules and workflows. And we see that used really heavily for creating project management softwares or tools, automating some certain types of workflows where applications need to talk to one another. If you ever needed to put a database behind one of your G Suite apps and give it some custom configuration, AppMaker is how you would most easily be able to achieve that. The second kind of extensibility option is called AppScript. AppScript is a language developed at Google for kind of JavaScripty. That gives you the ability to build on top of your actual documents, so your Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides. I will be going into a little bit of detail on AppScript. I'm not going to be doing any live scripting here today, so you'll be able to see what that looks like, but I would really, really recommend, if you're interested in this more advanced kind of level of building on top of your G Suite, go visit the G Suite Developer Hub. I actually think I opened it in a second window here. The G Suite Developer Hub, so developers.google.com/G Suite, is a phenomenal resource for understanding, okay, here's AppMaker, a low-code way to quickly build custom apps. Here's AppScript, essentially JavaScript that's G Suite aware. And here's a set of APIs and client libraries. You can actually really take G Suite to the next level by leveraging these things. But for the sake of today, I'm focusing on the end user kind of level of activities. Perfect. So just going to go ahead and jump into it then. So the first level of automation, I actually find that this is the one that the most people are actually already aware of, that I want to talk about, is filter rules in Gmail. Many people are aware of filter rules. This is basically an email handling rule that you create as the user that can tell your email if it meets some certain criteria, we should automatically handle it. So the idea here is to intelligently pre-sort your email as it comes in. You can skip the inbox for non-critical emails, drop them into a label or folder that is more effective for triaging that particular action item. And I actually have another tie-in today. I just showed the developer hub, but I'm going to be showing a lot of supporting documentation today, because with automation, it can help to have a little bit of guidance as you're working on it. And the resources out there, primarily developed by Google, are actually really, really awesome. And the tie-in resource that I have for filter rules is a common Gmail filters Learning Center article that literally gives you the exact information that you need to go do some really cool things with your mailbox and effectively be more productive in your email. So getting started here with filter rules in Gmail, the first thing that I recommend doing is actually configuring your mailbox in a way that makes sense to you. What I have right now is I guess this is the default or the standard Gmail box. And in terms of handling my email, I actually think that it's more productive if we use what's called a priority inbox. So if I go to set or the cogwheel up in the top right and click settings, I can go into the inbox section and change my inbox type. And what I really recommend doing, if you don't already, is trying out a priority inbox. This is going to be some quick automation to organize your mailbox for you into important and unread messages at the top, important emails in the middle, and then everything else, all those alerts that you get and document shares and calendar invites and things are automatically going to get sorted for you. Now, when we think about what a filter rule will do, a filter rule is going to take our inbox, and whenever we get a new email, it's going to go sort it somehow. So some of the ways that we can do that, and I'm going to reference the common Gmail filters, which again, Google has the full criteria here. Some of the things that we might do with that, actually, my favorite one is I want to handle my calendar invitations so that they stop cluttering up my mailbox. So this is actually already available in the G Suite Learning Center if you don't have this one already. And what I want to do with this is I want to actually apply a label to these messages. Basically, I want to say when I get a calendar invite, it doesn't need to show up in my mailbox directly. I'm going to see it on my calendar. So I still want to get the invite in case I need to go reference it later, or there's a different dial-in or conference link than it was showing up in the actual calendar side or whatever it might be. But I want to filter those messages out of my mailbox so that I can be more productive and more effective in my mailbox. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead up at the top of my screen. And actually, I might be able to blow this up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and click on the arrow on the right-hand side, and I'm going to create my search criteria. What emails, what new emails am I going to look for that have calendar invitation on them? And if we follow our common Gmail filters, we can see has the words, and we can just copy invite.ics. That's a calendar invite. And here's has the words. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. Then I don't need to touch any of these other settings for create filter, and I can click create filter down at the bottom instead of search. When I create the filter, there's a couple of things that I want to do here. The first one is I want to archive it. I'm going to check the skip the inbox button. And that's these calendar invites will no longer clutter my mailbox. And then I'm going to apply a new label called calendar invites and automatically sort these messages into that label. I actually created the new label live here. You could also assign to an existing label if you already have one in place. There are many other actions that you can take. You can mark an email as read, but still let it hit your mailbox. You can star a message, automatically forward if your domain allows you to, not all do. You can delete it. You can create a rule that says, well, for these type of emails, never send those to spam. The reason I like the priority mailbox is that it uses these mark as important features in the filter rules. So if I want to always or never mark these messages as important, I can do that as well. For my calendar invites, those aren't going to be marked as important for me. And then when I click create filter, And then I'm going to go ahead and tab out really quick and go ahead and demo this. And we'll give it a second to go through. While we're waiting for that new email with a calendar invitation to come in and automatically get sorted, what I'm going to go ahead and do is show you where you can manage your filters once they already exist. Again, this is going to be in the settings, and then under filters and blocked addresses, you can see, okay, we have this filter in place. We can see all of the rules for that filter, what it applies to, and we can edit or delete from here. Now, I actually already saw my inbox is still at the same 4 messages it already was, but in calendar invites, I have 1 new message showing up there. And when I go click into calendar invites, I can see that invitation I just sent over. So again, there are many reasons you may use a filter rule, whether it's to do with specific senders or recipients, certain subjects, keywords, phrases, document types, those types of things. Many different options for how to handle these things. My most common ones personally are applying a label, skipping the inbox, and marking as important or not important. But this is a great way to reduce the amount of time you spend triaging your mailbox. Priority inbox goes a really long way in helping you to pre-sort things. But at the end of the day, Google can learn with artificial intelligence only so well. And then as a user, you can use filter rules to augment your experience and improve some of that automation. And again, I really recommend just applying all of these common Gmail filters. You have to get used to using them, certainly, but they're exceedingly helpful for helping to triage email faster and more efficiently. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one. The next automation I want to talk about is creating a task within an email. Google Tasks is kind of an interesting aspect of the G Suite environment. The reason I feel that way is that when I talk to users and users that have been on G Suite for a while, there's kind of a split down the middle of users that heavily rely on tasks and users that never even use tasks at all. So tasks, for those that are not familiar, it gives you the capability to create a task list directly within your Gmail box or your Drive by using the side panel. So it organizes your task list. You can mark items as complete, and it gives you some kind of quick, easy functionality to be able to do that. Now, many users rely on their calendar for their task list or their email inbox for their task list. This is going to be a combined approach so that you can, whichever system you're using, you can get at the right information. Now, on the other side of that, a lot of users leverage sticky notes for their tasks or write by hand. And if you're the type of person who wants a notebook on your desk and you want to feel the dopamine rush when you cross out an item from your task list, maybe not for you, but I would give this a try because it can be really, really useful for ensuring that nothing falls through the cracks, even if you don't immediately have time to address one of your emails. So what I'm going to show here is how you can use an email to create or attach a task list. You can organize your high priority tasks with the context of whatever was in that email, and then even potentially assign a time to address a specific email or action item within your mailbox. So to do that, I'm going to use the in-app integration, the little side panel over on the right-hand side, and I'm going to go into tasks. Now, if I want to create a task based on an email, I see this email that's important very soon. I need to get to it quickly, but not right now. I'm going into a meeting, or in my hypothetical. All I have to do is quite simply click and drag into my tasks, and it will create the task for me. So very simple, very straightforward. I can create a task with a drag and drop. And then when I'm done with that task, I can just check that off and boom, we're done. Now, the advantage of doing this from an email is that when I later on, I close out of my tasks and I keep going through my inbox, later on when I see, oh, I have this task that's important very soon, what was the context for that? I can jump into the email directly from tasks. If you want to take that even a step further, you can go into the edit with the pencil. You can add details to that, and you can assign a specific date and time for that task to be completed. And then again, taking that even to the next level, you can repeat that task if this is a new item that you'll need to readdress time and time again. So if I go ahead and set that task, it's automatically going to save. I can add subtasks. And then now that it's actually assigned to a specific time, I can still click the link and go to the email. But when I actually go to my calendar, I have this new task that was created for me. And I have a quick button that just says view the related email. It's going to take me into my mailbox and show the exact context for that item. So again, when we're answering emails, often what we're doing is triage. We're reading through our email and saying, I need to do this now, I need to do this later, I don't need to do anything with this, and just trying to organize that as quickly as possible. Tasks creates an automated way to leverage 3 different applications all in one. In order to triage that more quickly and get those reminders automatically from calendar, or add in the different integrations that you need. So again, we're augmenting the workday by creating tasks directly from our email box. Perfect. So the next automation I want to talk about is probably the most complex that I'll go through today. So if there are questions, definitely feel free to drop those in into the application. But I want to talk about recording a macro with Google Sheets. The goal here, and actually what this is typically used for, is saving time by automating repetitive tasks. Someone gives you a huge spreadsheet with just hundreds or thousands of rows, or maybe it's a spreadsheet with 10 different sub spreadsheets underneath it, and they all need to be reformatted in virtually the same way. Now, traditionally, we would just go through and we would, reformat the way that we want and get it kind of where it needs to be. But if all of those spreadsheets or all of those rows or all of those columns follow a similar format, we can use a macro recorder in order to take the actions that we do, put them into context, and then repeat those over time. So there's quite a bit of I guess potential here, and this is where it's tricky. When we're giving a webinar, I want to make this as specific to your workflow as possible. So I am going to demo this and show kind of how I use it. But if you have any questions about how this is used, you can definitely drop those into chat. Now, when you do set up your macro, you can also set it to run based on triggers, like when someone accesses a document or updates a calendar, or at a specific time or date, or to repeat at specific time intervals. You can really do a lot with the recorded macros and sheets. But I'm going to show a very simple example of kind of what that looks like here. So to do that, I'm going to jump into a spreadsheet called a daily activity tracking. And within this spreadsheet, I have some formatting that's already been done, but I have a couple of sub spreadsheets that I really want to modify kind of in some way. So let's say across all of my spreadsheets, they all have 4 columns. They all have the same columns. It's just the content that's different. Let's say I want to bold certain categories here. Very simple use case. Rather than going in and bolding 6 times, what I can do is I can say I can say tools, macros, and record a macro. Then for this macro, I can use either an absolute reference or a relative reference. An absolute reference is going to say, when I run this macro, apply these changes to these specific columns. Column A and column D are the ones that I'm going to work in today. But if I want to use relative references, this can say, well, if I'm selecting column or cell A1, and then I want to bold B2 and B3, or as an example, you run the macro in reference to the cell that I select. So a little bit more complex, certainly, but this does give you the capability to say, here's how I want this macro to work. So today I'm going to use an absolute reference, and I'm going to click cell or column A. I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to select column D, and then I'm just going to bold, and then save. So when I create this macro, I can name it, and I can create a shortcut for it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then whenever I use that keyboard shortcut, Control Alt Shift 2, it will apply this rule to the spreadsheet that I have selected. So for example, if I come here into my my second subsheet, I can go ahead and run that macro, and it will bold those columns for me. If I'm not a big fan of key binding and using the shortcuts, all I need to do is go Tools, Macros, and then run that macro that I just created, and it will assign that out to my spreadsheet. Now, this was obviously a very simple macro. All I did was bold 2 separate columns in each of my spreadsheets. I reduced 6 actions to 3. So it was about twice as fast. Now, if I'm doing something more complex, like rewriting the cells or changing the formats or creating conditional formattings and things like that, when I'm recording a macro, I can actually do multiple actions and then be able to repeat those later. So let's go ahead and say I want to italicize column B, and then I want to erase or completely delete column C. Let's go ahead and save that. This is going to be the multiple actions macro. This will be my third. So I can do some serious things, with my macros when I'm interacting in my spreadsheets. And you can see at the top, it says running script, finishing script, and I've italicized and deleted a column. Similarly, if I want to click through it all, tools, macros, and multiple actions. And it handles those things directly. So from a workflow standpoint, for those users out there that are in and around spreadsheets frequently, recording macros is super powerful. The fact that it's no code, you literally just take the actions that you want to save them, name it, and then you can just run it over and over and over again, is enough for a lot of users to save a tremendous amount of time in their workday. But let's say we want to be a little bit more decisive around how we actually use our macro. We can actually go into Tools, Macros, and then manage our macros. And we can do a lot of customization into how our macro is being run. Now it's going to show us the exact formulas that it's using. And this is where I mentioned we're now in the world of apps script. So this is kind of the most technical part of the presentation today. And so we can actually read through what our script is doing for us. But let's say we want to set this on a trigger of some type. We want this to run every time someone opens the document, or every time there's a Thursday, the third week of the month. What we do is go to Edit, Current Project Triggers. It's going to take us to the Developer Hub. And here we can add a trigger to our document that says, here's which function I want to run. Here's when I want to run it. And then we can set some specifics around that. So let's say our spreadsheet was being fed from a form. We could actually rerun all of our formatting on the document every time a new entry was submitted to that form. And then it would automatically apply our formatting to the results of that form or the information that we were receiving. So again, I know this is probably the most technical part of the conversation today. This is something that I use quite frequently, and I know from my conversations with colleagues and with customers that it's actually not that well known that you can even do this within G Suite. But if you're ever going to do a really repetitive task in Google Sheets, record that macro and then just run it over and over and over again, and you can take 100 actions and turn it into 5 or 4 or 1 if you're able to do that well enough. So strong recommendation to get in and play around with this one. Now, one thing I did mention is that I want to connect all of the kind of demos that I'm doing with the actual content that's available online to help guide you through this process. For recording macros, I really recommend this G Suite Learning Center article called Automate Tasks with Macros. This will actually take you through the whole process that we went through today for creating and running a macro, editing or removing it, creating custom functions, and really taking your workflow kind of to that next level and saving you potentially huge amounts of time along the way. Perfect. So any questions about macros, feel free to drop those into the chat. I know that's kind of an interesting one. And if I can speak to a specific workflow, I would love to. All right, and then the last couple of automations that I'm going to go through today are really all about notifications. You know, how much time do you spend reading logs or responding to or to people notifying you rather than getting automatically notified? And the specific notifications that I'm going to go into are for spreadsheets and for the admin console. And this is kind of taking away that time that you would otherwise need to spend reading logs and ensuring that you get the right information at the right time. So returning to our spreadsheet, the place that I want to start is in the activity, in the notification rules for our exact same spreadsheet that we've been working on. Now, this only works for Sheets, doesn't work in Google Docs or Google Slides. I would love if it did. I'm not aware of any indication that it will anytime soon. But for those that work in spreadsheets, this can be tremendously helpful. Also, for those that work in Google Forms, this is a good way to aggregate your form responses to get notified once a day. But when you're working or collaborating in a spreadsheet, it can be really, really helpful to see who is actually working in that spreadsheet and exactly what they're doing with it. So to do that, we want to set a notification rule whenever any changes are made or whenever a user submits the form to the spreadsheet. And then you can get a daily digest or an immediate notification. So if you're waiting for somebody to go update a spreadsheet, you can set that right away. If it's a spreadsheet that people use frequently and you don't really want to get 100 notifications a day, you can get a daily digest here. And this is going to automate out your checking of the actual logs in this document. You don't need to go through and look at revision history. You don't need to go in and check the activity dashboard manually for your document. You can actually just get notified automatically by email anytime someone goes and makes a change. So definitely useful if you have many people reporting into the same spreadsheet. Definitely useful if you have a customer that you're asking them to fill in some type of form or request. Those tend to be some of the more common areas that we see those being leveraged. And then the final example of an automation that I'm going to go through today is on the admin side of the house. I'd like to show how to automate notifications for specific incidents that you might need to report on or be made aware of. So to do that, we're in the admin console home and we need to go into the reports section. And then from reports, we need to identify the specific type of action that we want to take. I'd say the most common one we get is Google Drive. So that's where I'm going to show. And we head into the Google Drive audit log. Now, for those who are not familiar, the Google Drive audit log shows a line-by-line running transcript of all of the individual actions that your users are taking in Google Drive. And especially if you have a lot of users, it's going to show an absurd amount of information in here. So we need to use filters on the left-hand side to get to the right information that we want to look at. I would say one of the common ones that I get requests around is I want to see all of the documents that are shared externally in the last month. So I can go and check the shared externally visibility, and I can go ahead and run a search on that. And that's going to show me all of the documents that were shared externally. I can load through and read these if I want. I can download these in a spreadsheet if I want and drop them into a Google Sheet or a CSV file. Great, I can see the information. What if I want to see every time, or what if I want to get notified when my users share externally? Well, I can go ahead and head into prior visibility and say the document started as private, which is our default. And then there was a visibility change from internal to external. And then I'm going to click Set Alert down at the bottom. And we can say this is an external share. We can define who this was for, if there's specific users or teams that we want to monitor. And then we can define exactly who we want this email to go out to. So very simple from an admin standpoint to configure these types of alerts. You might need to go in and tweak them as you do if you start getting inundated with alerts. I strongly recommend setting up filters rules for any alerts that you create so that you can get to that information in your email box if you need to. So again, we're actually combining automation if we set up an alert and then we create a filter rule based on that alert. But it's all about kind of treating our inbox more efficiently, more effectively, and triaging our email to the best of our ability. All right, so we're coming up on time here, and I apologize, we don't have a huge amount of time for questions. I only see a couple coming through, so hopefully we can take those offline if I'm not able to get to your question. Now, really quickly, I'm going to go into the use case of the month, which is using Snooze in Gmail, and then I'll hopefully have a minute or two to answer just a couple of the questions here as we're wrapping up. But if you do have questions, feel free to chat those in now, and we'll be sure to follow up with you to get you an answer to that question, even if I'm not able to address it immediately. So for the use case of the month, I wanted to talk about Snooze in Gmail because it's something that many of our users are aware of and using heavily. And some of our users found out about and said, "Oh my God, this changes everything," and which is, probably hyperbole, but that's okay. This also is kind of a nice happy marriage between showing a cool, simple use case And also this being kind of a form of automation where you're saying, okay, I got an email and it is important, but it's not important immediately. So an example of that is I have this email that's important very soon, and I want to, or I'm going into a meeting, or I'm going to be traveling, but I need to get to it right away. I can go ahead and snooze this email to a specific date and time when I know that I want to receive the email, and it's going to take it out of my inbox. By the way, it's going to drop it into a snoozed section on the left-hand side. I can always get to my snoozed messages. And then this email is going to get re-delivered to me as a new important email at the snooze time that I configured. So if I have an email that's going to be important tomorrow, I can just click snooze until tomorrow, and it's going to get it out of my mailbox, and it's going to re-deliver it as new and important tomorrow. And if I have an email that's going to be important later today, there are quick buttons, or I can configure custom timings and dates. So again, for those users that have a service level agreement, or you try to meet a certain commitment, I always say that I want to answer my emails within the hour if I can, but at a certain point, sometimes I get too many emails, or I'm in a long meeting, or I don't have the opportunity. So I want to get to them at least by end of day. Using snooze is a great way to set yourself up to say, okay, if I block out a specific period of time, that message is going to get re-delivered to me at that time, so that I can actually go ahead and address that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get into questions for our last couple of minutes here. If there are any feedbacks, or if you'd like to get in touch with us, I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide kind of up at the top. For everyone's reference. Very easy to get a hold of Dido. If you're an existing customer, reach out to your rep. If you are not yet a customer, didoweb.com/consult, and we will be happy to address these types of items. So getting into our questions here, the first one that we received was regarding the tasks and setting emails as tasks. The question was, can I delete or move an email that I use to create a task? And the answer is absolutely yes. You can still handle that email exactly as you would before. The only thing that I will comment there is that if you did delete the email and remove it from your trash, then it would kind of be a dead link in your tasks. So I would recommend archiving. With Gmail, generally speaking, we don't recommend deleting ever. If your organization has a policy around deletion, they should set that at the Google Vault level for you. So if you are getting rid of an email, you should just archive it usually. And then if you assigned an email to a task, and then archived it when you went to do that task, that would be a perfect workflow. It would take you back to the email completely undisrupted. Great question there. The next question that we got was regarding automating email information that pulls information from an email and auto-fills the data into a form or a template. So that question is it possible to automate email information that pulls info from email, then auto-fills it into a form or template? Yeah, absolutely. And I think the challenge that you'll bump into there is the same challenge that we see in data pipeline, which is how do you interpret or understand unstructured information? If you're pulling from a header field, or you have a fixed format for the email that users are adhering to strictly, it can be pretty easy to use the G Suite APIs to actually read and pull information from that email into your document. I would say that this is not a low-hanging fruit type of automation. This isn't like doing a quick macro record in G Suite. This is a little bit more heavy, but yeah, you definitely could achieve this by leveraging the APIs in that Google Developer Hub. Now, I would want to understand the specific use case and potentially make a recommendation there to say, like, is email the right venue for us if this is the workflow that we're using? And it may be that because it's simple to work with vendors, everyone has email, then it might work fairly well. But I would also consider using a form to actually apply this particular use case. So definitely recommend reaching out, to connect with us on that one if there's any help we can provide. Definitely doable in the G Suite world. Thanks everyone so much for taking the time to listen in today and to watch the G Suite webinar for September 2019. Feel free to reach out to Dido. Strongly encouraged to schedule a consult, and have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.